Welcome to Shiz Who, your top spot for politics. My role in bringing great content on current events requires your great role in liking and commenting on this YouTube video and subscribing to this YouTube channel. Be sure to do that, and I'll point out that which gets this show going, like Farley Perkins over at the Farley Perkins Agency for help with insurance needs, 757-271-6655. Also, if you're in the mood for some sweet treats, down in Old Town Portsmouth, ELG Sweet Boutique at 340 High Street in Portsmouth. Before that, you're going to want some great Southern food, and that's at Ellen's Homestyle and Barbecue Express, which can be found either on Portsmouth Boulevard in Portsmouth or on Indian River Road across from Regent in Virginia Beach. And if you need some financial assistance, check out Positive Vibes Incorporated with Mr. Seiko Varner, 757-932-0177. He also created the Hampton Roads Green Book, a great app in order to find great Black-owned businesses in Hampton Roads. There's also the Black Swan Mindset, brought to you by the Chronicles, which is a division of Shiz Who. So look that up. It is run by my awesome wife, Andrea Dixon, Shiz Venter, so definitely look for all that. And we also have this up and running now, so look for new dropping merch on Etsy at Etsy/shop/Shiz Who merch. We're going to be putting some good stuff out. Now, this show's topic is the current state of the Virginia governor race. As I do this show, there is one Democrat candidate, Abigail Spanberger, one Republican, Winsome Sears. There are two independent candidates, Donna Charles and Andrew White, and I don't know if they're going to officially make the ballot, but they have their websites up. For the sake of large numbers, I will focus on Spanberger and Sears. Virginia is a purple state. In large-scale statewide elections, it's purple with more of a blue hue. Even though Kamala Harris underperformed in Virginia, she won Virginia easily. Kane won Virginia too. Warner won it the last time he ran and came before that, so on and so forth. Not to discount the fact the legislature is Democrat at the moment as well. But remember, the governor is Republican. Glenn Youngkin won, and I didn't expect that in 2021, even though I had loud dislike for Terry McAuliffe, his opponent, as did many Democrats, which is funny because that loudness was prior to that primary as well. Yet the Virginia Democrats selected Terry over tremendous candidates in Jennifer McClellan or Jennifer Carroll Foy. Say what you will about Winsome Sears, and I'm about to, but the Virginia Republican Party put a Black woman on the top of the ticket before the Virginia Democrat Party did. I asked loudly to the ether, why was there no ambition to have a 7-candidate deep governor primary? Why is the lieutenant governor field full of candidates and the governor the one that is just Abigail Spanberger? Which reminds me, check out my show with candidate Alex Bastani tomorrow. He's running for a lieutenant governor in Virginia. Now, in going backwards and looking at years prior on the Virginia Democrat governor primary, I will note in 2009, Terry McAuliffe lost to Creed Deeds, and Terry McAuliffe had a Donald Trump endorsement. Do you remember when Trump was supporting Democrats? I love politics. He still lost to Deeds, but that's interesting. In 2025, I find the Democrat Party to be one I prefer on policy, but it is no better than the Republican Party on big money. In fact, Abigail has raised $16 million so far, and Winsome has only raised $5 million. And the Democrat Party is just as prone to run listless, usually white candidates on a statewide stage. And let us compare. Which candidate is more likely to service their base on populism and policy? Abigail famously had a congressional phone call after the 2020 election. She won a Congress seat against Delegate Nick Freitas that year. And she said the following in that call. She excoriated Democrats for not responding to Republican commentary, blasting those Democrats for being in proximity to the defund the police movement, and blasted them for being in proximity to socialism. She doesn't want to come off as very grassroots. She wants to come off as pro-police, something Terry tried very hard to do in 2021 as well, and look what happened. But hey, it's expected. Democrats prefer to run away from progressivism and keep a corporatist centrism. And it can very well work in Virginia again. Remember, Kamala won over Trump in Virginia. Here's why Kamala is worth noting again. Virginia currently is experiencing the great anti Trump movement, which is larger than the usual post new presidency anxiety that Virginia does. Remember, Bob McDonnell won pretty big because Obama was a new president. That's what Virginia tends to do. And last year, Kamala won Virginia 52 to 46. Tim Kaine outperformed Kamala, winning 54 to 45. If the lesson from that is that Virginia had a statistically measurable issue in disliking black women more than white men, look to how that translates to the current race, black woman versus white woman. And here's where the polling comes in. There are two polls of note on the spread between Abigail and Winsome Sears. The Virginia Free poll has Abigail up 4 on Winsome. And that's much closer to how Kamala did versus Trump. But there are detractors of that poll, such as Blue Virginia and Harvard Crimson, which say that that poll is flawed and is skewed toward Republicans anyway. Then there's the Roanoke College poll, which finds Abigail Spanberger up 17 points on Winsome Sears. That poll finds high Trump disapproval at 65%. Glenn Youngkin's approval rating has fallen to 46% in that poll, and he's at his most unfavorable yet, 50%. Sears is at 32% favorability and 48% unfavorable. So at least from Roanoke, there's a noticeable Republican plummeting effect. So Abigail just has to ride out a normal cycle to what may be a very large victory. Here's another stat I'll point out. In Roanoke polling, the last week prior to the election in 2024, they had Harris leading Trump by 10 points, 51 to 41. That poll missed both marks as Harris got 52 and Trump got 46. So let's apply that same numbers to the current poll with Abigail and Winsome. Abigail gets 44% and Winsome gets 31%. That's still missing the total electorate by 25 points. So do you personally feel Abigail is up 17 points? Do you feel she's only up 4 points? If Abigail wins by 17, she'd do better than when Kaine beat Confederate Corey Stewart 57 to 41 way back in 2018. Do you expect such a thing? I do not. Because the Republican turnout, I suspect, to be stronger than 41%, as the Trump machine remains stubborn. Crazy, but stubborn. And that brings me to some important points for me. What honestly is the difference between Donald Trump and Winsome Sears if they were Virginia governor? Winsome is running on high costs. So did Trump. But do I expect her to bring utility costs down? No. Dominion gave her $50,000. Now, I haven't seen any money from Dominion going to Abigail, but Dominion gave a boatload to Don Scott, Speaker of the House, Louise Lucas, Senate Pro Temp, and candidate for Attorney General Shannon Taylor, so Democrats aren't clean on Dominion either. Winsome leans heavy into her military history and projects tough on crime dogma. Now, Trump has no military history, but he's big on being tough on crime. He aims for immigrants at the moment, so I'd feel worried if the story of Winsome Sears was happening today. She was born in Jamaica and traveled to America at age 6. What if that was happening today in Trump's America? Not sure how Winsome would square that circle. And she could try to say that her family did it the legal way, but Trump has sent so many legal people to El Salvador and other places that certainly we'd have to be worried about Winsome Sears' story today in 2025. Winsome Sears is big on school choice, which has a grand design to remove government input on education. And Trump eliminated the Department of Education anyway, so they're lockstep there. Winsome is overtly wanting to protect right to work. Trump is big on being anti-labor union. Winsome is also big on talking about trans women in sports. She's part of the trans panic, which is something conservatives are more panicky about than actually Trump is panicked over, but that's still something. And I'll point out, Winsome is using rhetoric like fair and level playing field for women to become a success as part of her trans panic. But if you ask Winsome about the discrepancy between the pay of men and the pay of women, she'd probably take a step back. If you ask her to support programs that encourage such success, she'd step back because that would constitute DEI, and she's vociferously anti DEI. But why would I care if Winsome Sears is hypocritical? I don't want Winsome to win because of her politics. I just believe she's more true to the Trump Republican image, which Republicans can't do without these days, than Abigail Spanberger is to the Democrat image. As I look at Abigail's website, she starts off by saying she wants to grow Virginia's economy and protect the workforce. And then she includes bringing Democrats and Republicans together to tackle high costs. Do you notice Winsome Sears does not attempt to be bipartisan? Trump does not appear to be bipartisan. We need Democrats who want to succeed with solid Democrat policies. We need Democrats to know Republicans act in bad faith. For the Democrat base, it is working in bad faith to go above and beyond in placating a Republican's sensibilities. And Abigail's bipartisan rhetoric is troubling to me. And don't forget, Kamala tried to win over Republicans who simply didn't like Trump too. And that famously didn't work. Republicans certainly can be anti-Trump, but they don't support your policies, Democrats. So act accordingly. And I will congratulate Abigail for being much more pro-Democrat on education than Winsome, enough to say she doesn't want to do things that erode faith in public schools. And that's Winsome and the Republicans' bread and butter. They don't want a federal Department of Education. They don't want a state Department of Education. They simply want school choice. There's no faith in the education system when it comes to Republicans. But also look to Abigail in the police. She leans heavy into pro-police vernacular. Commitment and sacrifice of putting on the badge, she says. As a congresswoman, she listened frequently to police divisions. She threads bipartisan rhetoric into this as well. And what do Republicans want in terms of police? Republicans will strip each local government to the bone, education first, while trumping out how much more they want to give the police department. That's the bipartisan aims of Abigail here. Remember, she ran from the defund the police movement, not towards it. She also was running hard on cracking down on drugs. And Democrats don't have a clean record on the drug war. And it certainly won't change here with Abigail Spanberger. And here's Spanberger events touted bills by Biden and Trump on the border and drugs. Why would you want to tout Donald Trump for anything? Democrats in Virginia, why vote for Abigail here when she's just trying to be winsome on this? Abigail also touts her carrying a gun every day and uses the phrase responsible gun ownership. That's the rhetoric of a Democrat who won't sign gun control legislation. Guns take lives. She likes guns. I will appreciate how much more interested in reproductive freedom Abigail is than Winsome. Winsome is a religiously minded woman who doesn't agree with the very concept of gay people, hence why running alongside John Reed is so interesting. And of course, is very strident on being anti-abortion. So points are given to Abigail here for voting to codify Roe while she was in Congress. She also is heavily looking into fixing the issues inherent to Black and brown maternal mortality. Those are big things. I like them. Here's something else that's important to me. Israel and Palestinians. Here's where you can see the inherent rot, the bipartisan support for genocide that causes so much frustration with the party I prefer to support, the Democrat Party. Let's look to the recent terrorist act where someone supporting Free Palestine murdered 2 members of the Israeli embassy. It's easy to see that that was terrorism. The shooter admitted his plans, and aims are politically motivated. And how did Abigail and Winsome respond to it? Abigail said the following: "My heart is with the families and colleagues of Yaron and Sarah, who were murdered last night in an act of awful anti-Semitism. Hate-fueled violence of any sort has no place in our country." Notice how she said in our country, which means violence of political aim is okay in other countries. Here's what Winsome Sears said. Our prayers are with the families of the two individuals killed outside the Capitol Jewish Museum in D.C. This horrifying act of violence didn't happen in a vacuum. Anti Semitism and anti Israel hate are festering our institutions, and the consequences are deadly. Both Virginia governor candidates use the word violence. Both use the word anti Semitism. And in so much as we look to both women to take the side of anti violence, we look toward at least 54 Palestinians killed, most of them sheltering in a school caring for displaced families, by Israeli airstrikes over this weekend, after that terrorist attack in D.C. Said among other bombings I'm at. I've checked Abigail Spanberger's post since the killings in D.C. And nothing about the mass killings of Palestinians by an ally that we support, an ally she's voted to send arms and money to. She hasn't commented. Winsome hasn't had a post on it either. Because in the political theater that is Virginia, both big parties support all things Israel. Any violence did in the direction of Israel is bad, worthy of comment, worthy of a label of anti-Semitism. Any violence done from Israel is something worthy of silence. Or much like Bernie Sanders, still calling for the idea that Israel has, quote, the right to defend itself, without saying if Palestinians have the right to defend themselves. And there's no label of Islamophobia or hate from Israel from all the incessant bombings. That's not good enough. I know for a fact Sam Razul, Democrat delegate from Roanoke, Virginia, would not be so silent on this issue because he isn't so silent on this issue. Look at his pages. So there's proof of concept. The Democrats can be both pro-Palestinian and pro-Israeli, but the party at large refuses to run that from the top. They refuse to protect the sanctity of life in the Middle East from the top. And that's why you'd better hope Abby has a solid 17-point lead, because much like my vote with Kamala Harris, if you can't call a genocide, then you will not get my progressive vote. And I call for people like me to find a progressive independent candidate to vote for or write in come November. We have to stop being so Republican when we run Democrats. Thanks again for watching Says Who, and thanks to the viewers for making a show like this possible. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel so you may tune in for the next Says Who, which again, I interview Alex Bastani, candidate for Virginia Lieutenant Governor in the Democrat primary tomorrow. Don't forget to hop on to Etsy/shop/Says Who merch. And I want you guys to have a good one. You guys have an excellent night.